Collins, and I'll be your moderator for today's program, Mobile PERS, the Great RMR Frontier. We have a little housekeeping to take care of before we start. First of all, we're all in mute mode today, so any questions that you have, you can queue those up at the end of the program. With that, I'd like to thank Jacqueline Sean and Shannon Murphy and the ESA team for providing this valuable platform, and welcome all of you to the call. Our first speaker and host of the program, Mr. Chris Holbert of SecuraTrac, will be joining us momentarily. Just as a quick introduction, today's purpose of the panel is to bring together 4 industry leaders of mobile PERS, monitoring, technical and legal dynamics to provide valuable insight into what lies ahead in the industry, what it is, integrated services, technical interfaces and liabilities, how mobile PERS expands wallet share, increases the entire lifespan of your RMR, and reinforces with your existing clients that you're in the forefront of the technological curve, providing them with greater opportunity for the future. This is an interactive, so if y'all have questions, please submit them so we can answer as many possible at the end of the presentation. We'll also asking a few poll questions and presenting that information back to you on the screen. So please participate. It's easy. Just click the answer that best fits your situation. I'd like to introduce at this time Chris Holbert, Chief Executive Officer of SecuraTrac. He and his 2 business partners formed SecuraTrac in 2008 with a mission to bring families closer together. Prior to SecuraTrac, Chris served as a Chief Information Officer and Chief Operating Officer for 2 companies for over an 11-year period, and prior to that, Senior Analyst for consulting companies American Management System and Ernst & Young, where he led a multi-million-dollar software development program. Chris graduated from UCLA with a BA in Political Theory and the University of Chicago with a Master's in Finance. At this time, we would like to start the presentation, and I would go ahead and start the slideshow at this point. Thank you, and please continue, Chris.
Thank you, Robert. I don't see the slides on my screen. Are you able to see them on yours?
Yes.
Okay.
Not on mine
right.
either.
Jacqueline, did we give the presenter to Robert?
Yes, I believe the presentation's up and running now, Robert, correct?
It's up now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I still don't see it on my screen, and that's okay. We'll improvise. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and I'm happy to present a few things with respect to SecuraTrac and what we do with mobile PERS. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to talk about here is the idea that we can introduce mobile PERS and mobile PERS technology into dealers, distributor programs without having to introduce a lot of new risk that might be associated with a new product line, a product line that might extend capabilities that are somewhat new for the organization. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be disruptive to you or your customer base. It also doesn't have to be difficult. There's certainly ways to make it that way, but what we try and do is try and focus on ways to introduce it so that it's fairly seamless. So how do you add a mobile PERS product offering? Well, one of the easiest ways is to focus on a part of your consumer base that's interested in mobility. The same kind of safety that they're interested in the home can also be extended outside of the home. So rather than marketing it to a broad base or creating a sales plan to open a new market, you might tap into the existing consumer base. We've seen with our partners that have had success, they've done best by focusing on the group that's interested in mobile solutions already. Does this work outside of my home is a question that will often happen. What happens if I push my button, if you will, and I'm not within range? Questions that will lead them to more of an active or a mobile lifestyle will often give businesses that have existing consumer bases an option to move the new product line into an area that will have some immediate success. We would suggest that you don't market it in the beginning, only because you might not exactly know how to market the new solution. So rather identify the consumer base based on their questions and based on their needs that tend to be more open to mobile and therefore have the ability to then sell into that group based on your current marketing and sales plan. One of the things that will help keep a smooth transition is to leverage your existing relationships, your service relationships with your central monitoring station, as well as partnerships with respect to the software platforms. And we have two of the best joining us here, and they'll speak after me, and they'll help explain how moving from a fixed PERS solution, sort of an in-home solution, to a mobile solution can be done without a whole lot of disruption to the business because they've already done some thinking and some building in those areas. One of the things that we do see, and I think you'll see more and more as you have a chance to look into this, is that you can extend your market share and grow your revenue base, your RMR revenue base, because the mobile solutions tend to appeal and also become needed by people who are younger and therefore are potential customers for longer. So whether it's younger adults that have medical issues and they need that mobility but also need the peace of mind while they're on the road, whether it's mobile employees, sales force, field service, etc., or whether it's lone worker programs. So there's a number of areas where the PERS market, when it becomes mobile, now offers a number of other applications that are simple extensions for an organization. PERS, what I want to do briefly is just explain, what the PERS market offers today as far as options, and then I'll briefly then explain where it's going in the next 6 to 18 months to give you a sense of how the technology might fit into what you do or what you would like to start doing. Right now, the PERS market for mobile PERS focuses on two different approaches. One is a software load that can be loaded onto a smartphone. SecuraTrac offers an Android and an iPhone version, what we call SecuraPhone. There's a number of options out there. Some are complex, some are pretty simple. Ours essentially is a slide bar, as you can see on the bottom of the screen there, that allows for people to immediately communicate their whereabouts, where they're going, and connect to a central monitoring station for help. There can also be a second piece of hardware or a small device, roughly 2 ounces in weight, the size of a garage door opener or thereabouts. You're able to track people, pets, even assets with these locators or with the mobile phone. These technologies offer the ability to go global without any changes. So our devices work in over 120 countries. No configuration changes required. Of course, there's service charges that are different, but for the most part, there's really nothing that changes. So it's a pretty seamless transition. Today, the most popular technologies used for positioning somebody who is on the move is GPS, just like you would a navigation device in a car, and also assisted GPS or AGPS. A lot of technologies that use AGPS, there's various ways to actually use AGPS or deploy it. Some of them are very, very inaccurate, up to a quarter or even a half a mile distance, because they use the towers, the cellular communication towers, to position the person. That's how they get the assisted part of the assisted GPS. There are also other AGPS technologies. Trilateration would be one. If you're interested, you can look it up. That can be very, very accurate, but very few devices today use that, especially in personnel and personal tracking solutions. So your best bet is generally to go with a GPS positioning technology that may use AGPS as a backup when GPS is not available. We actually mesh our carriers, so our cellular communications, so we work, again, seamlessly in over 120 countries. Some companies and some solutions offer a single solution, maybe a T-Mobile in the U.S. or maybe an AT&T. Our platform, we call ReliaTrac, interoperates with automation platforms that are used by these emergency response centers, one of which is Mastermind. There's a number of others that we interoperate with out of the box as well. One of the things that you'll see today in today's mPERS or mobile PERS environment is that these devices, whether they're smartphones or independent phones and locators, have the ability to respond to environmental effects. So maybe you fall, or maybe you're going too fast or over a threshold, or maybe you haven't moved in a certain period of time, those can be sensed, and alerts or events can be triggered and sent through the automation platform. The central monitoring station can then respond. So where are we going? Mobile PERS, the devices will be getting smaller. You can see some down below here, both in watch form and also in sort of the independent small form factor on the left. They're getting smaller. We're also being able to incorporate other sensors. So the one that looks like a Band-Aid there on the right is a wireless monitoring device for the person, which will monitor things like falls, things like your respiration or heart rate, body temperature, and all that can be incorporated into where are you going, how fast are you going, so that not only can we better serve the customer, but also respond specifically to where they might be. All of this points to the importance of having the ability to work with a central monitoring station that is effective at these medical and or emergency events, as well as mobile events, and also having the software that's capable of handling them. So your agents or your customer or your vendor's agents have the ability to treat the case specific at its point in time. So that was it for me. Thank you for your time today, and hopefully I have a little bit more about where we are today in PERS and where we're going.
Thank you, Chris. That was really a great informational piece, and appreciate your time today to identify with this. Our next speaker is a gentleman that many of you know in the space, Mr. Hertel with the Rapid Response in Syracuse. We have a poll question that needs to be answered. Sorry about that. So if you please go ahead and enable that, and we'll go ahead and see if we can go ahead and process that poll question for us. Thank you for taking time. Okay, so now we've answered that poll question. Again, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. You know, as a part of any mPERS solution has a core component of PERS history as well, and it's a reliable and immensely helpful emergency response. Operators take calls 24/7, 365. Rapid response monitoring is an industry leader in the central monitoring space. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce a well-known, highly respected figure in the CMS industry, Morgan Hertel, Vice President Operations for Rapid Monitoring. And just to keystone Morgan's defining technical requirements to the vendors in the industry for over 32 years, he's done everything from wire pulling to complex system implementations in the field. And today he manages one of the leading central stations in the industry and is active on the SIA, ESA, and CSAA committees. As a regular speaker on all central station subject matter, Morgan is renowned for his participation on accident-less server, which has shown an exceptional breadth of knowledge and his willingness to share that knowledge. He currently holds the following certificates and license of NICET Level 3 Fire Alarm Technology, California Alarm Company Qualified Manager, Oregon Certified Trainer, and a number of other certificates. We welcome Morgan, and we thank him for his time today and his area of expertise.
Hi, Robert. Thank you. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on what coast you're on today. I want to go through a couple of things today, and that is really the part that the central station plays in today's mPERS. Mobile PERS is really just starting to get some traction today, and it's one of the most exciting and probably the most explosive places that we're going to see within this industry that's come in a long time. So we're going to go through this. It's fairly quick, and then if there's questions, save them to the end, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. In the case of mobile PERS or mobile monitoring, whether it's vehicles or it's lone workers or it's Alzheimer's patients or it's mobile medical type of applications, the central station becomes the hub for everything. It's managing not only all the alerts and alarms and things that are coming from that side, but it's also managing the incidents on the other side. And it's very different than traditional central station environment where you simply picked up the phone and called the police or the fire department, sent them to a physical location. now we don't have a physical location. We now have a moving target. And we become really the keystone to all of this. The subscribers are looking to us to help them when they get lost or they get panicked. The subscribers, people that are on their call lists, are looking for us to help find these folks or find these vehicles or motorcycles or whatever happens to be. And the agencies are also now looking for us to help them find them, because in the case of now we don't have an address, it's not like driving up the street and, oh, there's the building, we're good to go. Now we're looking for somebody that will be within a vicinity of somewhere and helping them describe what they look like or what they might be wearing, and bridging, responding people onto those calls as well as RPs on those calls. So it really changes. And so from a central station point of view, this really isn't a hobby anymore. This has to be something that they intentionally do, something that they understand how to do, and understand how to do it well. But that being said, when you're looking at it from an alarm company's point of view, it integrates quite nicely into that business model, because you already have a very captive customer base. You have a great place to market to, and this just becomes a very easy thing to drop into your line of services and things that you do for those subscribers. The other thing that changes a little bit now today with the central station side is you now have, especially with respect to medical information, we have compliance issues with HIPAA. You have to keep that data secure all the way downstream. So that becomes a very different part and piece that the alarm industry is not really used to. And that applies to not only the central station keeping track of that, but also to the alarm dealers that are collecting that information. The personal data is now very, very, very heavily regulated and restricted. The other thing that has to happen as part of this process now is because traditionally in traditional alarms where you have a physical location, finding the responders was pretty easy. Worst case, central station had to pick up the phone and call an agency and verify that they actually go to that location. But today we never know where that person could be. They could be sitting in their living room having a problem, or they could be 1,000 miles away, or potentially even in another country. So now you have to have facilities and processes and services to find where these people are not only where they're located, but who's going to respond to those people, whether it's a public agency or it's a private response team or whatever it happens to be. You have to know a lot more today and have to have a lot more of those sort of moving parts and pieces, something that your traditional central station knows nothing about. And it's very exciting, but it's also very different at the same time. Some of the other things that are happening in this space today is how are your people trained to handle these things? It's very different today when you're dealing with medical alarms in general than you are in traditional burglary. You have people that are taking calls now that have never done that in the past, and many times you're dealing with people that are passing away. It can be quite unnerving. You're dealing with customers that are having live events, and you're having to try and assist those. You're having to learn how to get that information to the responding agencies in a very critical time factor, much different than dealing with burglar alarms. I know at Rapid here, we have a specialized group, and they're all EMTs or EMDs, and they're specially trained to handle those kinds of sort of life and death circumstances. They know how to communicate with 911 agencies. They know the terminology to use. They're not there to help render medical advice, but they certainly know how to communicate those different events that are happening now today out in that space. The technology today is also moving rather quickly. We're dealing with mapping technologies. We're dealing with looking at PSAPs today. We're now getting information from systems like SecuraTrac that are coming from non-traditional alarm-type pieces of equipment. It used to be years ago you could throw up a digital receiver that handled just about every format out there, and you're pretty much good to go. Now we've got information coming from all different kinds of devices, and especially the mobile devices. There is no standard today. There's absolutely no common way to do this. Every single one of them is different, and we're having to bring that information in from very different kinds of systems and bring them and present them to operators in standardized ways so that they know how to understand them. But it's still a very complicated process. But the technology does exist today to do that, which is very good. The other thing that we're starting to see a gigantic surge in is the delivery of mobile applications, and especially in the PERS world, where we have not only loved ones that are out there, want to know how mom and dad are doing, but we also have caseworkers that are either part of hospice organizations or part of other kinds of organizations that are keeping track of groups of patients. The ability to push those kinds of incidents and information or vital statistics or medical information, whatever it happen to be, to these over mobile applications is becoming really a very important part of the work that's happening out there today. Everybody's used to, I want the information and I want it now. And one of the fastest ways to do that is doing that to mobile applications. Let's see where we're at. Okay, readiness for central station. Some central stations are very well equipped and ready to go for this. They've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. They've been on what I will call the bleeding edge of technology. I got tons of blood and scrapes and bumps and bruises from dealing with this stuff over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been a pretty steep hill, but we're there, and some of the other central stations are. It's a very steep learning curve. There's not a whole lot of information out there. There's not a whole lot of people that are really in a position to help you get there as well. But there are plenty of central stations that are out there ready to go, and be able to do this to you. The one thing that's very different about the mobile PERS business today is that the cost of the technology on the central station is expensive. It's not cheap to develop all these interfaces or to pay somebody to develop all these interfaces, to subscribe to PSAP lookup services, to hire EMTs and EMDs to do that kind of work. It's not for the faint of heart. But for those dealers that are looking for a high-end solution, there are those that are ready to go. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. Next slide, maybe. Well, there we go. Okay. All right. So, and I kind of touched on this a little bit, is that, the signaling for these things is fairly simple. We're getting various alerts. Some have 1 or 2, some have, 20 or 30, depending on the type of device that it is, whether it's just giving us a location in an emergency, or whether it's giving us speed or the nearest addresses or the lat long, or whether it's going into a geofence or out of a geofence. There's a lot of information that comes, and it's ready to go. The next bullet point we kind of touched on a little bit. No standards exist today. There is no UL listing for this stuff. There is no ETL listing for this stuff. There's no ANSI. There's no this. There's no that. There is no listing. So everybody's pretty much flying by the seat of their pants on this stuff to get it to the point where it's really ready for the industry. And with companies like SecuraTrac that have been out there beating the streets trying to get this stuff to go, they are there. And they're ready for it. They're ready for you guys. I think most of the major automation platforms are ready, and one way or the other either have the infrastructure to bring in those kinds of signals, or they've already done it already, or they're getting ready to do it. We're certainly ready to go with that kind of stuff. Ready to take those signals, and that's where I'm at. So I think we'll go to the next poll question, and then we'll turn it over to Rick.
Thank you, Morgan. We really appreciate all your insight and the level of interest as well as your expertise in the subject matter. Just to take a couple of seconds here to answer the poll question. It's going to be really important, critical information for us moving forward in the space. So thank you for taking just a second here to answer that. Okay, while you're answering those questions, I'd like to take a few seconds to describe what the next speaker is really about rural automation software, like what Mastermind plays in the evolving mPERS market. And basically, we are really, it's very critical for any CMS that the automation software is at the heart of every dynamic of that business. Software solutions such as MAS, and this makes the business of responding to emergency calls and dispatching an effective and efficient process. Mastermind is an industry leader, has recently released a pre-built integration that enables all their current and future customers to integrate into mobile PERS with their software module. This planned advancement is a welcome attribute, and it's already a robust integrated solution. SecuraTrac and MAS are now ready to service all your mobile PERS needs. It's my sincere pleasure to introduce Mr. Rick Denos. Rick manages new and ongoing engineering and development efforts for Mastermind monitoring application. The device integration such as receiver, video, intrusion, and third-party interfaces to the Mastermind monitoring product. Rick has acquired significant experience in the alarm industry with over 27 years with MAS platform. He started his career with MAS in 1985 and since then has performed a variety of roles including support technician, support manager, technical services manager, purchasing agent, as well as consulting role for major customer consolidations, conversions, and onboarding. And with that, I'd like to thank Mr. Denos for joining us today and welcome you to the program.
Thank you, Robert. Let's go ahead and go to the first slide, please. As you've heard from both Morgan and Chris, there are a lot of moving targets in this particular market. Both the mPERS and the PERS monitoring markets are just about as diverse as the customers they serve. And when I say that, I really mean the end user, the actual consumer. Central monitoring stations have been involved or desire to be involved in this specialized monitoring opportunity for many years now. And I think in most cases, if you ask a central monitoring station what it means to monitor PERS or mPERS customers, you would probably get as many answers as CMSs that you surveyed. Some choose just to monitor the pendants, or what we've kind of known traditionally as the help by falling down buttons as alarms, and keep it that simple. The medical signals are handled by the same dispatchers that handle their burglaries and panic signals. At the extreme far end of the spectrum, however, there are CMSs that monitor vital statistics, have nurses and EMTs on staff. They measure metrics and respond proactively based upon predefined medical parameters. So the decision as to whether to enter this PERS and mPERS monitoring arena can revolve around the question, do we have the equipment and physical infrastructure necessary to monitor those devices and those signals? But really the extent or the depth to which a CMS gets involved is ultimately going to become a personnel and staffing decision. For certainly as you go beyond that basic help by fallen down pendant monitoring of alarms, PERS and mPERS becomes a very labor-intensive proposition. There are central stations out there dedicated solely to the monitoring and management of PERS and mPERS, and they would validate for you, as Morgan has done, that this is very time-consuming and labor-intensive. I've actually visited a few of those centers and personally witnessed one where I would have told you I really felt that the operator was more of a concierge service provider than an actual dispatcher. So our role as a software provider is to provide a solution that can successfully manage PERS and mPERS across this broad range of services that the central station may choose to offer their customers. With the previous understanding that the monitoring of PERS and mPERS is very labor intensive, the role of the monitoring software provider continues to be that of labor savings and reduction, just as it is with the traditional alarm signal event management. We want to automate all that can be automated. We want to have secure management of personal medical information. We want to present concise, effective, event-driven, specific instructions. We need to log the responses and interaction of those actions and then provide various means of reporting and viewing of that data. Mastermind has actually been used to monitor PERS customers for well over a decade now in various levels of involvement. And our customers range from those monitoring those basic pendant alarms to full-service PERS-only central station monitoring centers. Specific medical information such as doctors, allergies, medical conditions, call lists specific to the medical event have actually been available within our product for quite some time on medical-specific dispatch pages. But what has changed recently is we have coupled that with what Mastermind calls workflows. And that then presents to the dispatcher or the operator the pertinent data based upon the event that they're currently handling and or the step or stage in which they are involved, rather than to have to first visually consume and understand all of the data being presented at one time, and then knowing what the action is that they need to take. The net result of combining those existing medical information parameters and workflows together is, and of course it is the most important thing, is that the initial action can be taken quicker and more consistently on a regular basis. Add to that the development of open APIs, which was mentioned by SecuraTrac as well. We've done something with them. And then understanding the basic devices that are out there, it is possible then for a central station to really knowingly and intelligently decide to what extent they would like to or should enter the PERS or mPERS monitoring space. Next slide. So from the central station aspect, what have we kind of seen the drivers and what's kind of really taking things forward? Really, as previously has been mentioned, people are living longer. People want to be mobile. I know my grandmother drove till she was 90 years old and lived independently because she had a medical monitoring device. As well as adding to that, you've got tremendous incentive by medical insurance providers. They are favorably disposed to anything that can get you out of the hospital or out of secondary care and really have you back in your home. And that is a real motivator out there, that there's a lot of growth potential in this area. The central stations that are dedicated solely to PERS and mPERS monitoring have actually already demonstrated that a PERS monitoring center can also be proactively involved and not be just responding to alarm events. As has been discussed, there's a myriad of devices out there right now, to oximeters, to, scales that you stand on, all kinds of Bluetooth-enabled devices that can be in your home that are transmitting a bunch of data. But that data's got to be managed and it's got to be parsed through and used to do something meaningful. It is not only possible but proven that the sky's the limit in this monitoring space as it relates to services that you as a central station can provide related to PERS. Next slide, please. So for us, and Morgan really mentioned it, this is really all about event management. We've just got, besides burglaries and panics now, we've got these medical types alarms that are coming in. Mastermind as a product has a proven track record of effectively managing events, being reliable, and being very scalable. If we add to that the development of open APIs to be able to talk to these myriads of devices, Mastermind workflows for the efficient and structured processing and presentation of the events, you've got a great combination and an ability to, within your central station, effectively manage PERS monitoring. Add on top of that, with our latest Mastermind EX services product, we have a library of services that allow easy access to the database, allowing central stations to report on or mine that data in any manner that the business needs and customer commitments require. And you've got a winning combination and an ability to really step into this arena at whatever level you may choose. That's what I've got.
Thank you so much for all of that data and the information you've shared with us today. Rick, this is of vital importance for anyone considering moving into the mPERS space, and we really appreciate all of the information, all your hard work and the integration of SecuraTrac and MAS. I'd like to make sure and remind everyone that we really need to have those poll questions answered, and you can do that at this time. I'm going to go ahead and continue to talk over this time in order to move the process along. As an important part of any business strategy and new product rollout is to ensure you're protected and have a proper understanding of the risks and rewards involved. And after hearing a bit about those opportunities, we felt it is important to spend some time on what your business can do to minimize risk while maximizing gain. We are pleased and rewarded to have with us today an industry legal leader and a friend of the industry for many years, Mr. Les Gold. Les is the chair of the corporate business transactions practice at Mitchell Sealberg and Knapp, where he represents foreign and domestic companies in a broad range of corporate financial securities transactions. He is very active in areas of mergers and acquisitions, government contracts and financings, the development of new technologies, licensing, regulatory issues, and other emerging security and protective initiatives within the security, manufacturing, energy, trade, and defense arenas. That is a sentence. The counsel to the Secretary of Industry for many years, Mr. Gold has served as counsel to the Medical Alert Monitoring Association, and under his leadership, MSNK has represented security alarm companies in the U.S. and abroad, purchasers and sellers in nearly every major M&A transaction in the past decade. In addition, Mr. Gold authored alarm licensing law in California and has worked with many municipalities and states to develop alarm security licensing standards. His regular security and in the law column in the nation's trade publication, the SDM, is well read and thought out in the security industry. I'd like to thank Mr. Gold for joining us today and appreciate his time and area of expertise. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Leskold.
Thank you very, very much, Robert. This has been very informative for me also, and just to talk a little bit about the value of your mPERS or PERS company, and I think that to a great extent, a great deal of what I can really mention to you has already been covered by Morgan and by Rick, what the issues are. For all intents and purposes, you have two very, very important factors, among others, in your business. One, of course, is your customer, and the second of all, and perhaps most important, is the contract. Traditionally, in the security industry, the contract has been so important because it ties up a term, whether it's a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years, the contract ties up the term. In the PERS industry, it's a little different because the contract terms, it's silly to have a lengthy contract because of the longevity of your customers. So the term is not quite as important as are the protective provisions in a contract. The protective provisions in the contract are no different really in the PERS situation, and I'm including PERS and mPERS, than they are really in the security alarm industry. And you folks enjoy a very, very unique situation because in most jurisdictions, the courts frown upon liquidated damage clauses or limitation of liability clauses. However, when you're providing security, and we're including security also in the PERS and the distinction between person and property, the courts have allowed these particular provisions to be included in your contracts. And that's really true in all 50 states in the U.S. and also U.S. law. So effectively, if someone gets hurt or if someone dies as a result of negligence on your part, if your contracts are appropriate, proper, the courts will allow you to liquidate or limit the exposure that you have. Very, very important provision because of the nature of the business that you are in. We had a case in the U.S. In Michigan just a couple of years ago where effectively the question came up, is there a difference between protecting property and protecting the person? And in that case, the court specifically said that there is no difference between the person and the property. So that was, of course, very, very valuable. When we're dealing with mPERS, it's a little different, and I think both Morgan and Rick mentioned it. You're dealing with mobility, and the question comes up, how can you protect yourself in the agreement? Well, first of all, we suggest to folks, when you have an agreement in the PERS industry, first of all, keep the language simple so that the older folks can understand it, particularly the people who are going to utilize it. A couple states in the U.S. now they insist on plain language. So we tell people, keep the contract simple, but make certain that your protection provisions are in there. But as I say, in the mobile PERS, there is a unique distinction, and that is the mobility. And it's sometimes, and again, the central station operators, I think, can answer this much more easily than I can, but sometimes it may be difficult to locate where the parties are, and I think Morgan referred to that. We certainly urge people in your contract to make certain that there is an understanding in the contract that this occurs and that you cannot always identify or locate specifically where the particular person who requires the service might be located. So these are the types of things that should be included in your contract. Another item that comes up is, of course, can we get in the next slide, please? Is the licensing. Almost every state in the U.S. now, or most states in the U.S., regulate alarm companies. To the best of my knowledge, and this is going to change, it's changing now, there are only 5 or 6 states in the U.S. that are regulating the PERS industry. So it becomes important to make sure, and the 5 states are Florida, Kentucky, New York, Ohio, and Texas. But there are other provisions, states like California, where they indicate where a 3-day notice is required to terminate when you have residential sales. In a PERS situation, they require 7 days notice. Now, these type of situations can occur in a variety of states, and I'm not familiar with all of them without specifically looking at them. Another thing that you have to watch out for is that in some states, they still commingle the PERS business with the alarm business. So it's very, very possible that the authorities may include PERS business with the alarm business. So you really have to be very, very careful. You have to make sure that you comply with the licensing provisions. That becomes a very important ingredient. PERS companies are very, very valuable. PERS companies generally, alarm companies have for years sold on a basis of a multiple of recurring monthly revenue. And interestingly enough, PERS companies have also sold on this type of a multiple, which is unusual because most companies are valued on an EBITDA basis or a discounted cash flow basis. PERS companies may be, but you're still in the recurring revenue business, so it's important to make sure that you have a contract and to make sure that your contract is always up to date. Beyond that, I say if anyone has any questions, we'll be very, very happy to respond to them. And just make sure that you protect your contract because that is the single most valuable asset that you have. And I thank you very much.
Les, thank you so much for your not only your regulatory information, but the generalization of protection. And we really appreciate your area of expertise in mobile and PERS basis. And we'd like to go ahead and post the last 2 poll questions. We're running a little short on time, so while those 2 poll questions are being posted, and you can just click off the ones that are most applicable to you, I'd like to take a couple of questions or just read a couple of questions that we have received since the seminar started. And this, I believe, it looks like it's going to Morgan Hertel. He's out of San Diego. I have a local CMS that does a good job, but I don't think they're equipped to do mPERS. If I want to jump in, can I have an mPERS monitored by a separate company? And this is from Morgan.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time where you've got some service that's not offered by one central station, but another is. I think just about everybody in the industry is dealing with that one way or the other.
If I can just jump in for 1 second on that too, because in your contract where a third party is doing the monitoring, make sure that you include the third party in the protection provisions of your contract.
Good advice, Les. Okay, so the next question that we had posted was from Chicago. An alarm company, my CMS uses MAST, but how do I know if they have the program you discussed ready for me today? Is this a solution available now? And this is for Rick.
Okay. To get all of the components that we talked about, workflows probably being one of the key drivers of that. They do need to be on 6.28 or newer mastermind monitoring. And then the API itself, which was recently developed and then has actually been being tested by SecuraTrac, I could probably tell you for sure that they don't have that API right now. So they would need to reach out to us, and most importantly, whoever the devices are that they're using, that device manufacturer has to be willing to write the plug-in to our API.
Okay, great. And we're going to take a look at a couple more here real quick. This looks like out of Miami, a PERS dealer. Will my current PERS contract cover me with mPERS, or should I have a separate contract, or can I incorporate what was discussed today? Les, obviously that's going to be something you would be taking.
The answer is it probably does, but the only thing that I would make sure is that you're covered in the mobile, from the mobile standpoint, because of the fact that people are moving around, and you want to make sure that they understand that you may not be able to locate the particular party involved. And that, I mean, if you have a good contract now that's covering your PERS, I would say it's probably fine, but that is the one area that I would check. And the other area, of course, is probably licensing, because as long as there's mobility, folks may go from one state to the next, where in the original state they're licensed, but in the next state where the potential call comes from, they may not be licensed. So these are things that should be included.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Les. I have another question here from a New Jersey alarm company. I have a large industrial and institutional campuses my company secures at maximum capacity RMR. How would I approach them with mobile security concept? And this is for Chris.
We actually handle situations like that quite a bit. And I think the most important thing is something that Les mentioned at the very beginning of his talk, and that is you just have to know your customer. Not all industrial or commercial accounts are going to be the same. Some might care about their 58 or 258 drivers and wanting to make sure they keep their eyes on the road, and if they should need help, they also have the ability for an emergency response component. And something like that might be perfect for like a mobile app on a smartphone. They don't need a separate device. But then there's another group we've worked with out of the Midwest, a large energy company that's got 500 collectors. And as you can imagine, in today's day and age, that's becoming a little bit more volatile as you walk around the neighborhood looking for the collection on the energy bill. And they actually want a separate device, one of the other devices that we offer, so they can be discrete and separate, because the phone seems to be the target when they go after and try and remove devices from people. So I think first of all, you have to know the customer to know which solution is best for them. But then even within that, some have their own CMS, their own monitoring station depending on their size. Others don't. And having a provider like SecuraTrac, where we're pre-integrated with a number of different automation platforms like Mastermind and others, as well as with world-class monitoring centers like Morgan's at Rapid Response, it'll make the transition and the total offering that much easier. So understanding what pieces of the solution they need are important, and perhaps which one's best or most appropriate for their need, then you'll be able to tailor the offering. And that's what we would do most often with our distribution partners.
That's great, Chris. Thank you so much for managing that. We have, let's see, I believe there's some more questions directly sent to the panelists if you want to check your chat line in there. Okay,
one of the questions.
I've got a couple questions. One
perfect.
question that's come in: who do you consider to be the dominant player in the mPERS arena today?
I don't think there is one. I think it's all over the place. I mean, I think SecuraTrac's at a product level is certainly out there, but I don't think you have enough penetration to say that there's one person that's leading the pack yet, at least from my perspective anyways.
Yeah, this is Chris. I agree with Morgan. I think that's what makes the decision by distribution partners and dealers interesting. And I think for us, if I'll try and be objective for a minute, I think what's best is that distribution partners and that go with us pick us because they like what we offer and how we offer it. Some companies focus very specifically on one approach. If that approach fits, then maybe that's a good solution for people. What we're trying to do is build sort of a distributed or sort of a diverse product offering, so that if you have more of a professional base for emergency response, you may go with a smartphone, but that smartphone device to the central monitoring station, to the software that's used by that station, is seen just like it would by a pendant type device that might be used by a senior that's somewhat mobile, mostly in the home, but still gets out and about, but needs that same level of security and peace of mind. So we try and differentiate ourselves by having real easy to use but diverse product offering. But there is really a lot of different options right now. Probably 5 to 10 options in the U.S. alone.
I would like to add one thing onto that, Chris, if I may.
Sure.
I think on layered on top of that is being very, very selective about what you need these devices to do, and to understand the difference between, let's say, a CDMA product that doesn't take voice and data simultaneously, which is half of a solution. So you have to be careful who you're partnering with, in the space, and it's a very specific type of information that you're looking for. You want a complete solution. Whomever you choose to go into the partnership with, make sure that you're doing your due diligence and making sure that the solutions are complete.
Sure. Maybe this is Chris again, but I want to make sure we clarify what you're getting at, because it's important. CDMA-based solutions versus those that are, so more Verizon-based network versus, let's say, an AT&T, which is based on GSM traditionally, or different communications protocol. The CDMA will allow for one channel of communication at a time. So you can connect and have a phone call and a conversation. Hey, I need help. This is where I am. Or you can send data that says, this is my address, this is where I'm going, and send help to this location. But to do those simultaneously is something you can't do with most CDMA solutions. So if the solution you're looking at has a device that is CDMA-based, you would need to make sure you clarify that before perhaps you assume that you can do both. For example, with GSM-based solutions and 3G and so forth, you can do multiple communication at the same time. So you can send an alert or an alarm event at the same time you can have a conversation. So they can track where you are and where you're going, where you've been, et cetera. At the same time, they can ask you, how are you feeling? Do you want me to call, A, B, or C person to help you out?
Someone asked a question about insurance, which is a very important question, and that is there a difference between liability insurance for PERS and mPERS? And the answer is no, except the liability insurance does not necessarily cover you for the services that you're providing. You really need errors and omissions insurance because normally the liability covers you when you install something. On the other hand, when you're monitoring, which is a great deal what this business is, it's going to be an errors and omissions. So make sure, because some people don't understand that, and it's a very, very important distinction. You have to make sure that your own insurance carrier understands it. But for specific response to the question, there should be no difference between PERS and the mPERS.
That's great.
Okay, gentlemen, I have another question here. Traditional PERS consoles include safety features like low battery and restore, AC loss and restore, weekly auto testing, low battery on pendants, etc. What are mPERS doing to ensure these safety standards continue?
I think that would be
hard to answer that. I mean, most of them are doing the same kind of thing. If it's mobile, obviously you're not going to have necessarily an AC fail, but you will have low batteries. Some of them will tell you that it's on charger, so you know that it's been put back in the charger. Most of them have some sort of check-in process or the inactivity process. So I think your supervision is very similar to what the traditional supervision has been in the past.
Okay, and I have just a couple more questions. It looks like someone has expressed concern. Customers are asking about mPERS, but the price seems to be a concern. So how would you address that?
I'll
you get what you pay for?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably a good way to encapsulate part of it, right? I mean, you're getting a lot more with a mobile solution than you do with a fixed location or home-based solution. Having said that, I actually don't think the pricing differs that much from a retailer end user, payer perspective than traditional PERS. It can be as low as in the mid-20s and as high as in the mid-50s, depending on which provider you're looking at for the end user. I think where the difference becomes, and this is something that I think everybody will deal with at some point along this transition, is the difference is in the margin for the distributor or the person that's selling and managing the customer, selling to and managing. And the biggest difference is traditional PERS benefits from using a home phone line that's between $15 and $30, depending on what part of the country you're in, that the distributor or the dealer doesn't have to pay for. But now in a mobile environment, all of a sudden that mobile line, if you will, is now part of the cost that everybody bears to deliver the solution to the customer. So it eats into that margin. That free margin is no longer available because you're using, Mr. Jones and his home phone as the conduit for the alarm. And so that becomes a bigger challenge. But the price point actually, again, mid-20s to mid-50s, depending on what kind of features and call service, et cetera, you offer, is really not that much different than what you see at the home-based solutions today.
Okay, and I have a final question. Is there a difference between alarm monitoring and mPERS monitoring licensing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some states have very specific licensing for PERS and mobile PERS.
Is the best thing?
As I indicated, right now there are only 5 or 6 states, to my knowledge, that do have licensing, and I don't even believe that all 5 have licensing. So there are very few that have licensing for PERS, and I suspect that the licensing for mobile PERS is going to be exactly the same. But for those of you in the business, I would keep my heads up because every jurisdiction is looking for revenue and control. And I think as the years go on, you're going to see more and more regulation in the industry and more licensing required.
Well, I think that brings us to the conclusion of our webinar today. I want to thank again ESA and the team, as well as all of the panelists today. We really appreciate everyone coming on board with us. You'll be getting a survey next week regarding the dynamic of this program. Thank you so much and wish everyone a fabulous day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.